Hello, apologies that I cannot be with you today, and because I cannot be there, I am reading this to video. My colleague Helen will share more with you, and I have total faith that she will represent the practices and methods of the Wellcome Collection Inclusion Team as best as we can. I am Teresa Cisneros, the daughter of Vicente Cisneros and Lucrecia Puente, both of Mexican lineage. I am a Chicana or Mexican American. I was born on the Texas-Mexico border. I introduce myself this way so you can understand a little about me and my practice. I practice from where I am from, not where I am at. On the border, we have a simple philosophy of, if you are okay, then I am okay. I grew up knowing that our behavior affects one another, and therefore we should always consider the other when we make decisions. A friend said to me, "You're like this because you are a desert person, and desert people cannot survive on their own. They need one another." That is what I carry into all my practices, whether as a curator or administrator or an educator, or. Currently, I am Inclusive Practice Lead at the Wellcome Collection. I have been in this post for a year. It is a 3-year contract. I mention this because you can say I am part of the diversity, inclusion, culture sector profession. Though you should know, I historically have focused on curating and arts administration, not on diversity and inclusion work. However, I do center the question of social justice and creating more just institutions in all of my work in the past, present, and future. Today, I want to share with you a little about how I am going about devising and framing the practice of inclusion at the Wellcome Collection, which entails staff behavior, programming, exhibitions, publishing, operations, collections, library, and the many things that Wellcome Collection is at any given moment to any given person. As a member of the Wellcome Collection Inclusion Team, we have a mandate or strategic plan that started in 2018. That is what I consider to be a radical strategy that focuses us to center deaf, disabled, neurodiverse, and racially minoritized communities in how we practice, who we practice with, why we practice, and where we practice. But at the core of this strategy is accountability and responsibility of staff, which is important when we are thinking about our ethics, our behavior, how to do what we say we are doing, and how we ensure that these ethos and ways are embodied, the moving from policy to embodiedness. But you may be thinking, what does this mean in relation to a place like the Wellcome Collection? What are they doing or thinking about? In our team, there are 5 of us who have different areas of practice. I would tell you about mine. My title is Inclusive Practice Lead, which if I think what it says is what I have to do is model, which is what being inclusive can be, where it may be uncomfortable, where it might be challenging, but also that I may be thinking about things from a varied perspective. One where I am in constant conversation about what the strategy we have says we should think about and focus my working through it, but also being it. With this in mind, I want to tell you about a project that is framing my practice and all practices. When I started, I was asked to think about how we could have a more diverse audience engaging with us and to expand our partnerships and collaborations, to bring in especially those 4 groups we are keen to engage with. I spent 3 months talking to people. I met people across the collection, all teams, and made myself available to everyone. In those meetings, I would be asked, what is your strategy? What is your plan? What are you thinking? By the end of this period, I understood that I did not know what the problem really was. I knew we had evidence of the lack of certain people working with us, attending our events, and also who staffed the collection. But what I knew was that I did not know what the fundamental core problem was. The question was, why are we not practicing inclusively? What was preventing our staff members from being able to design, to curate, to hire, to develop thinking from a more inclusive practice? This led to my thinking of a new framework to test on how we could do this. Currently, in the corporate sector and the civic sector, methods have been developed to design for the user. It is called human-centered design or person-centered design. I am from the arts, a curator mostly, an administrator, so I had limited knowledge of what this was. However, a colleague who works in the trust told me about this method. Because my intuition kept saying, is it possible to audit people's skills on inclusivity? What would it take to dig deep, to take a deep dive of reflecting about ourselves in an honest way? This is not common practice in a workplace. But for me, I kept thinking, it's not ethical for me to require staff to be inclusive if they have never learned how to be. The learning, doing, and being has been absent for a number of reasons. With the above in mind, I proposed to bring in an agency to help me design and deliver the person-centered design for inclusive practices. a 4-month research project with 10% members of staff to do deep research, to co-design deep solutions, to include practices for an institution to get a baseline of the real problems, barriers, needs our staff in delivering through an inclusive way. We will find out the results and get a report back in early March. This effort takes time, money, and commitment, all of which the Wellcome have. The intention is to develop a framework that we can share with the cultural sector. We'll try out the next phase, which is how we design learning for all staff to take part in as a form of action learning research, so that all members of staff understand how to best embody inclusive practices. We are in the initial phases of institutional change, but I do believe that using methods that are real and practical are ways for staff to learn and then become more responsible for their work. And in the end, they can be held accountable to our ethos as an institution. This is the longer-term project, but in the meantime, I'll give you 2 examples of work that has taken place on a more immediate scale. When I first arrived, I was challenged by a curator to rethink the hanging of a painting, which was very offensive to people who came across it. It was in our reading room. It had remained there because an external committee thought it was good for conversation. However, the staff who have to be in the space were not comfortable in using this work in this way. I had been in a position for a few weeks, and I took a liberty at a meeting and questioned why the work was still up if in reality no one wanted it there. So the following day, the painting was put for removal. However, we faced the fact that it would still be in our guidebook. We replaced the painting with something a bit more neutral. However, we decided to write a label that recognized we could no longer hold the painting as it was, as by keeping it in place only reinforced colonial and offensive thinking. We chose to remove the painting, but we did not negate it, nor negate we still held it. This is one small act, but one that has had wider impact, and one which had given staff greater confidence to rethink our labeling and how we could take risks as well. Another example of what it means to have a strategy around inclusion and policies about access and diversity came through a loans committee. I was invited to a loans committee and I thought this will be interesting as I have no clue what was coming up. We had a request by a gallery who were curating an exhibition on paintings that when we read the curatorial concept felt it was very colonial and racist. We went around the table and someone said, well, if we say no, we may get a reputation for being difficult. Another said it would be great for the institution to finally get this piece on display. I had to remind the committee that if we loaned the work out, we were acting in bad faith, that a little racist or a lot racist, the curatorial framing was still racist and was antithetical to our policies and our strategy. It is very simple. We have to practice what we say we are doing, and that needs to cut across all our decisions and everything we do. Thank you.